Railway was the first wholly elevated line in Britain, the first elevated railway in the world to be worked by electric trains, the first line to be controlled by automatic signalling, and from 1921 by a system of coloured light signals. And it is also credited with installing one of the first escalators at a railway station. It opened to the public on March the 6th, 1893, over the 5-mile section from Alexandra in the north through the city centre to Herculaneum in the south. To tap residential traffic, there were 3 extensions. To Dingle on the 21st of December 1896, and in the north to Seaforth Sands on the 30th of April 1894 and Seaforth and Litherland on the 2nd of July 1905. Throughout its life, the 7-mile line was owned and operated by the Liverpool Overhead Railway Company. Today there are few visible remains, and it is hard to imagine the trains, 16 feet above the ground, travelling along an elevated structure at an average speed of 20 miles an hour. The line was swift and efficient, taking just over 20 minutes end to end. It carried thousands to work on and around the dock estate at a time when Liverpool handled 25% of the nation's trade. Now the river and the older docks are empty, most activity being concentrated in the flourishing free port at Seaforth. But memories of the railway and its unique rolling stock survive. 46 motor cars and 8 trailers delivered between 1892 and 1895, plus a few trailers added later, including some ex-motor cars. The formation was motor car, trailer, motor car. The line was built to avoid the heavily congested Dock Road. It consisted of 567 spans, mostly in 50-foot lengths, together with bridges and 1 tunnel. Passing through the commercial heart of the city, it crossed the 3 main tramway arteries serving the pier head, and carried beneath it the Mersey Docks and Harbour Board freight line, connecting the north and south dock systems. A rare glimpse of a 2-car train passing Stanley Tobacco Warehouse shortly before 2-car operation was discontinued in the 1930s. For visitors, a ride on the overhead was packed with excitement, as it offered unrivaled views of the dock estate. These sequences were taken by G.H. Hesketh in 1949, when the docks were still benefiting from the post-war boom in trade. Ships of every nation were on display, identified by their distinguishing funnel markings, such as this Holder Brothers vessel. Gladstone Dock was opened in 1927, and a new overhead railway station in 1930. Cargo is offloaded from a United States line vessel. Essential repairs occupy the men at Canada Graving Dock, including using long brushes to apply rust-preventing red oxide. A grab dredger removes sediment. And at Brunswick Dock, the hatches are battened down on a grain barge. As always, there were the tugs. Within 25 years, most of these sites had disappeared. By 1955, the future of the overhead was in jeopardy. £2 million was required to renew the elevated structure, and like the city's surviving trams, this unique line would soon be gone. Most of the rolling stock also needed replacing. Car 4 dated from the opening, although it had been widened in 1903. Note the collector shoe. These sequences are by Ron Oldfield. Eight complete trains had been modernised between 1947 and 1955. They were distinguished by aluminium bodies, automatic sliding doors, streamlined roof vents and upholstered seats, although in some cases capacity for a three-car train was reduced by 50%. Filmed by Jack Wise, this train, consisting of motorcar 24, trailer 14 and motorcar 8, was rebuilt in 1951. They were nicknamed the Streamliners because of the jazzed-up paint scheme. The coloured light signalling installed in 1921 was visible for over half a mile and allowed a train to pass every 100 seconds. All units still retained their original trucks and control equipment, together with 75 horsepower motors installed in the 20s. 1956 was to be the railway's last full year of operation, as the directors of the company were seeking parliamentary sanction to close the line on December the 30th. Seaforth Sands handled heavy early morning commuter traffic, but 1956 began badly for the railway when on February the 4th an arsonist set fire to part of the station buildings. The flames later engulfed two trains standing overnight in the station, destroying cars 2, 4, 6 and 12. Arson was confirmed by the discovery of a tyre and remains of a train seat. The station was patched up and reopened 2 days later. Between 1906 and 1908, the Lancashire and Yorkshire Railway provided a service linking Aintree to Dingle via the overhead. From 1908 to 1940, this route was used twice a year on race days, and between 1947 and 1956 on Grand National Day only. This involved working the 500-volt overhead stock in series only over a 3-mile section of 630-volt BR track, as well as reopening a signal box and repositioning the semaphores for one 8-hour shift. The annual ritual attracted cameramen such as John McCann, who filmed the race day specials on their final day, the 24th of March 1956. The collector shoes on the leading car 13 cause spluttering and arcing as the train passes North Mersey Junction box, approaches Aintree on the Liverpool Exchange Ormskirk line, and comes to rest in Aintree Station. This 3-car set was still virtually in original 1893 condition. Note the unusual symmetry of this train. The width of the trailer coach is shorter by 10 inches than the two motor cars, which had both been widened in 1902. A light engine off a race day special working. Closed for 5 years, Ford Station was on the former Liverpool Exchange Aintree Electric Service, abandoned in 1951. Midland Compound 40681 and Jubilee Class Resolution negotiate the west end of Aintree Yard. Each train carried a BR pilot man, a BR code, in this case C822, and the older stock displayed a large route board. This train of wide cars had an overall seating capacity of 242. A brief glimpse of number 1 passing Aintree loco shed, and this is believed to be the last overhead train to leave Aintree. Knowing that the line was likely to close, Geoffrey Ashwell, Peter Matthews, Jim Joyce and Jack Wise all filmed aspects of the railway in the city centre. Number 26, modernised in 1954, pulls into James Street. Note the indicator blind, sliding doors and third-class emblem. From James Street Overhead Station, it was possible to see a few yards away the entrance to James Street Underground Station on the Mersey Railway. At this point, 3 railways all crossed, but at different levels. The Overhead, the Mersey Railway and the Dockboard Railway. To minimise wheel squeal either side of this bowstring girder bridge at James Street, flange lubricators were used. "51237", one of the endearing ex-Lancashire and Yorkshire Pug tank engines, trundles beneath Pierhead Station. The baffles above the chimney were meant to disperse the smoke, but over the years the constant passage of these locos had contributed to corrosion of the overhead structure. Careful application of the Westinghouse air brake brings this train to a gentle stop. With the threatened closure, many drivers must have looked back to the days when the line was vital to the war effort, and every attempt was made to keep the trains running. These views by Roy Ashdown show the remains of the Customs House bombed in 1940 and 1941. Customs House Station was renamed Canning in 1945. A modernised set crosses the Cheshire Line's goods yard onto the 200-foot-long lattice girder bridge leading into Dingle Tunnel. Today, by far the largest concentration of remains survive at the south end of the line, including the 3/4-mile-long tunnel, which also incorporates Dingle Station. The island platforms, signal box, track and passengers have long gone. But the storage siding area is still identifiable. This van is descending the incline passenger subway which led into the booking hall situated on Park Road. The building itself has since been demolished. It was here that passengers descended underground to go overhead. The tunnel portal was cleaned as part of the 1984 Garden Festival. Close by, 2 former stanchions. In 1956, John McCann took various views along the length of the line, starting on the Lattice Bridge at Dingle. To the right, smoke rises from Brunswick Loco Shed, and there is a glimpse of the footbridge leading to Herculaneum Station. After this train passes, note the difference in width between original cars 3 and 4, the latter being widened in 1903. The wheels of the overhead trains in their tunnel were only 2 foot 9 inches above the Cheshire Line's tunnel, directly beneath. Herculaneum Shed was the original station closed in 1896 when the line was extended to Dingle. From Herculaneum to the city, warehouses dominated the riverside of the line. Many have since gone. Whilst on the landward side there were goods yards, warehouses, ships' chandlers, small workshops, snack bars, tobacconists, and the inevitable public houses. The only location where the line passed under rather than over a bridge was north of Nelson Dock Station, where it descended to street level to pass beneath the Bramley Moor high-level branch opened by the Lancashire and Yorkshire Railway in 1855. Note the train pulling away from the coal staiths towards Sandhills. This was the only section of ballasted sleeper track. Throughout the rest of the elevated structure, the flat-bottom rail was laid on longitudinal timbers fixed to the decking. Known to the employees as the switchback, the grades varied from 1 in 40 to 1 in 80. Note the Midland Railway Sandon warehouse in the background, demolished in 1971. With typical Liverpudlian wit, the regulars pointed out that whilst at Dingle passengers went underground on the overhead, at Gladstone and Huskisson they walked over the overhead. At both stations the riverside platform lay inside the security-conscious dock estate, so all exits and entrances were by footbridges onto the landside platform and the dock road. Note the old-style enamel station sign. These were replaced by imitation London Transport logos at some stations in 1947. And the suffix dock was also omitted. One of the first sets to be modernised leaves Gladstone Station. Note the base of the footbridge. Canadian Pacific liners were regular visitors to Liverpool. The Empress of Scotland, launched in 1929, left the River Mersey for the last time on the 31st of December 1957. Seaforth Sands signal box on the right-hand side, and note the train formation numbers painted on the guard's door. Today, Seaforth and Litherland is one of the intermediate stations on the busy Southport line. In the background is the bridge which once carried the race day specials to Aintree. In 1956, an ex-LMS Electric is outbound to Southport, whilst number 4 passes Seaforth South signal box. The box at Seaforth Sands had 30 levers, and during a normal 16-hour day there were over 2,700 lever movements. The box controlled through trains, short workings to Seaforth Sands only, and movements to and from the 7-track shed and works. Note the Cunard liner Caronia in the background. Number 45 was one of a batch of 40-foot-long motor cars delivered in 1895. Number 20, delivered in 1892, was 45 foot long and 10 inches wider than number 45. Whitewashing the platform edge at Seaforth Sands involved some nifty footwork. As predicted, the railway closed on December the 30th, 1956. Campaigns to reopen the line stopped demolition of the structure until the 23rd of September 1957, just 9 days after the closure of the city's last trams. The withdrawn stock was stored at the north end until broken up, only 3 cars escaping. Today, all trace of the railway's existence at Seaforth has been swept away. Steam locomotives continued to operate around the dock estate until November 1965, and diesels until August 1973. John Ryan filmed number 1, an Avonside 060 of 1904, on an enthusiast special in 1964. This loco is preserved. The overhead structure was once directly above these tracks. In the 1950s, all visitors to the city were encouraged to ride the overhead for the last time. Phil Tatt made the following film in the summer of 1956, and it provides a final memory of the lost glories of this unique railway. Offset by the majestic grandeur of Gladstone Dock, a train curves into Seaforth Sands, once the terminus for the company's short-lived feeder tram service to Great Crosby, which closed in 1925. The tracks on the right lead down to North Mersey Goods Yard. And the signal box in the distance on the left controlled the annual race day specials. The Empress of France and the giant 200-ton crane Mammoth form the backdrop to this view taken from Gladstone Station overbridge. Approximately 1/6 of the elevated structure comprise bends and curves, like this particularly tight one at the north end of Alexandra Station. Avonside 060 No. 3 was new in 1930. Coal wagons in Bramley-Moore Dock, opened in 1844, are seen in these two views of the switchback. The replacing buses were to take nearly double the time for the 20-minute journey between Seaforth and Dingle. Emerging from Dingle Tunnel, seen from inside the driver's cab. Coloured light and semaphore signalling at Herculaneum. The crossover here was used for access to the two-road shed. This was the first section of the line to be taken down in September 1957. Approaching Pierhead Station with its unusual overall roof. St Nicholas Place Bowstring Bridge is seen from the cab and from street level. The elegant red brick warehouses on New Quay have long been demolished. The junction used once a year by the Grand National Specials. And finally, a three-car train rounds the curve to Seaforth and Litherland. In 1970, number 3 of 1892 was fully restored for static display in the Liverpool Museum. It is also possible to see modernised trailer number 7 at the Steamport Museum in Southport. In 1993, the railway would have been 100 years old. To mark the occasion, it would seem appropriate to reconstruct a length of the overhead structure in the vicinity of Albert Dock, and possibly operate a service with replica trains. This would indeed be a fitting monument to one of the country's most unusual and original railways, the Liverpool Overhead. Some of the profits from the sale of this video and our other presentations will be given to tramway restoration.